I'm sorry.
Yeah, but
So sorry.
doctor gave me steroids last week, and it hasn't done
It's going to be
anything.
this whole season. I mean, I hope.
Tell me about it. Good evening. This is the Daily Drum for Wednesday, March 20th. Here's what's happening. A teenager is dead after a shooting in Herndon, Virginia. Fairfax County Police say it happened in the 13,000 block of Copper Mine Road near the Sonesta Embassy Suites Dulles International Airport. Coates Elementary School nearby was placed on lockdown. Police continue searching for a suspect. Well, criticism from members of the D.C. Council after Mayor Muriel Bowser missed the submission deadline for the city budget. The budget was supposed to be submitted to the council today. It cannot be introduced until it is certified by the Office of the Chief Financial Officer. A spokesperson says the 10-day certification process hasn't started because the budget hasn't been submitted to the CFO. Council Chair Phil Mendelson expressed displeasure about the delay.
All of that's tossed out, which is unfair to the hundreds of public witnesses who now must rearrange their own schedules and don't know how. This delay is 100% on the mayor. It disregards the law. It is an affront to the council.
Mendelson called the delay unusual. The fourth sheriff's deputy who tortured two black men in Mississippi has been sentenced to 40 years in prison. This is the federal judge's most severe sentence so far. Former Rankin County Sheriff's Deputy Christian Dedman is part of a group of white officers calling themselves the Goon Squad. They illegally entered the men's home, brutally attacked and sexually assaulted them for nearly 2 hours. 2 more sentencings are scheduled for tomorrow. And the Howard University men's basketball team was oh so close, but not close enough. The Bison lost a squeaker to Wagner College last night, 71-78 in the first 4 game in Dayton, Ohio. After the loss, Howard guard Bryce Harris spoke about coming from behind in the second half.
The last play, we had two different plays drawn up. We had a play if we were 2 points down, and we had a play if we were 3 points down, especially with the time that was going in. So we wanted to try to get Jordan Harrison a play called Shovel to really push the tempo, try to get as deep as he could with Seth Towns trailing and flip it back to Seth for hopefully an open 3-point shot. I think we didn't get the ball down as far as we wanted to do, and Seth was a little bit further out probably than he was comfortable shooting. But in saying that, we still were able, I think, to get 3 great looks at the basket. But sometimes the basketball gods are with you and sometimes they're not.
That was actually Howard head coach Kenneth Blakeney. This was the second NCAA tournament appearance for the men's team in as many years. Let's take a look at our weather now. The elevated wildfire risk continues in the DMV as brush fires burn in parts of Northern Virginia, fueled by low humidity and gusty wind. Tonight, cold and clear with lows in the upper 20s to low 30s. Tomorrow, sunny and cool with highs mainly in the upper 40s and low 50s. Coming up, we're at the Reporters Roundtable tonight with a look at some of the top stories of the week. Insight is next on WHUR and WHUT TV.
On the go and on demand, WHUR and WHUT are with you. Download the WHUR app today to get full access to shows, playlists, and our latest contests. To access WHUT on demand, download the PBS app and make Howard University Television your station. Catch up on our WHUT original productions anytime, anyplace on YouTube at WHUT TV. WHUR and WHUT, better together.
You may have noticed something different on Monday nights at 8 p.m. on WHUT. We like to call it Must See DMV. As part of our mission to amplify your stories on your station, you'll get to see some of the finest works from our creators who call DC, Maryland, and Virginia home. It's Must See DMV, Monday nights starting at 8 p.m. right here on WHUT, Howard University Television.
Welcome back to the Daily Drum on WHUR and WHUT-TV. This is the Insight segment. I'm Harold Fisher. We are at the Reporters Roundtable with a look at some of the top stories of the week. My guests are Dr. Avis Jones-DeWeever, Editor-in-Chief of MaxBlack Politics, and Micha Green, Managing Editor of the Washington Informer. I invite you, as always, to X me at HFisherWHUR or find me on Instagram at Harold T. Fisher. Micha, thanks for coming back. Avis, good to see you.
Good to see you too.
Good to be seen. Boy, I tell you. Okay, so this Howard game last night. Rough first half, but oh so close last night. Let's hear what Bryce Harris had to say first about coming from behind in the second half.
To be honest with you, this is a resilient basketball team. So the fact that we did that, I'm honestly not shocked. That's just a true testament to who we are, not only as basketball players, but our character. I mean, I can't even say, I could sit here and talk all day, but like, that's just who we are. Like, that run is just a testament to everything we went through during the season, So, honestly, it just came down to playing together, being connected, make sure we stay connected, and that was the mindset during that run.
Avis, did you watch the game last night? Tell the truth, shame the devil.
I have to admit, I did not.
Why did you?
However,
Everybody was watching that game.
except for
we were
me,
all
apparently.
we were all cheering.
Well, I do want to say, it definitely shows that this is a team that doesn't give up.
Right.
Coming back from behind like that, not giving up. And the word character was used, and that's exactly what it takes. It's a shame they fell short. I promise you next year, I'll be watching.
Yes.
Go ahead, Micha.
Well, that's the attitude to have, because the Bison will definitely be back next year, and we're ready to see them move forward in the NCAA tournament. Congratulations to them, first of all, for how far they've come year after year. They have been champions in the MEAC, and I am elated to see this team win. So kudos to them. I also have to shout out the big party that I'm sure there were multiple, but at least we got a little intel about a party at the Green Turtle in Columbia, Maryland, where there were tons of Howard folks celebrating those young men yesterday. It was a beautiful celebration, and though they did fall just short, 68 points to 71, Wagner 71, but I mean, that comeback, 17 points in the second half, really quite impressive. I can't wait to see what they do. And kudos to Kenneth Blakeney for just cheering this team and leading them to success, and kudos to the team.
Well, it's so funny because, I've said this before, I'm not a basketball fan, but, with that said, and like Avis.
Yeah, I love basketball. I just have a former forward here, okay?
Oh, see, there you go.
Get it right.
That's right.
Okay, good.
Look, no lies during Women's History Month here.
How about that? So, and I'm going to be honest, because I didn't watch the game in its entirety. Obviously, it was starting when I was preparing for the newscast. But after seeing the first half, and I was just thinking to myself, oh boy, this does not look good. And this is not an ESPN conversation. Maybe Avis would probably be better qualified. But I will say, I mean, seriously.
Yes.
You know, because I didn't play basketball. But, they did say that Howard's issue was poor ball handling in the first half. But, and I did see some of that. But then in the second half, it was like a completely different team.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that was just really impressive. And as the coach said earlier, they had a plan if they were 2 points down or 3 points down. And he said the basketball gods were obviously not in their favor. But even as I was watching those last seconds tick down, one missed three-point shot. The second one, I knew
Yeah.
I knew the last one was going to go in, and I knew that I was going to end up kicking over my coffee table or something like that. So, I mean, I think we always want them to win.
Right.
But I think, particularly when so many of the top seed teams with so much more money, so many more resources, but the thing that I think Howard has is character, and kudos to the coaching staff.
Yes.
to get them there again twice.
Yes.
In 2 years, which means that some may say it was a fluke last year, even though this was their fourth total appearance. I don't think it's a fluke anymore.
No.
Clearly not. I would say, everybody loves a Cinderella story. And so the fact that, as you mentioned, they're there twice in a row, that is not luck. That's skill. That's leadership. That's a coach that knows what he's doing. Those are players who are hard workers and who have the type of character, as they demonstrated last night. And given what you just said, coming back as a completely new team, in essence, in the second half, shows a lot about what happened in that room, in that locker room during halftime.
Yeah,
right?
sure.
I wouldn't want to be a fly on the wall.
I'm serious, but what happened? Life was breathed into those young men.
Yes.
And so, I will make sure. I promise I will be watching next year because I definitely expect I would bet on them to be back in the tournament again.
And I'll have you back.
Yes.
Absolutely.
To hear,
I know. I'm feeling like we are having like a true sports talk now with Avis on this show.
Yeah, just remember that's not going to happen with me a lot.
I wanted to drop that I also was a forward, but let me make that clear. I was not at all good. Look at Harold's face. He's already thinking about my career. Yes. But I come from a really major basketball family. I want to shout out all of the Greens who are really, really great at basketball. My uncle played professionally. My dad just was named a real Harlem basketball player last year in the Hall of Fame. So I'm very proud. My nephew, Kyrell Green, who I'm going to shout out, is playing in Bali right now, and we're really proud of him. So,
gosh, both of you forward, and I feel like I'm going backwards. Let us move on to some more serious stuff right now. We know that the second round of the drug-free zones initiative coming out of the Secure DC crime bill is underway. The new zones in the Trinidad community and in Petworth. No arrests made last week, and to the point more broadly, there was prior to that mass shooting on Sunday, there was a string of 3 days where there were no murders in D.C. Micha, your thoughts about where we are, even though we're only weeks into this new law, the emergency side, because Congress still has to do its thing.
Congress still has to do its thing. And I do want to say that I appreciate efforts to combat crime. That said, I've been really listening to the activists who have had some very serious and valid concerns about what these drug-free zones really mean in terms of targeting folks, in terms of having a reason to have law enforcement, if you will, interact with people simply for congregating. And so that does, for at least the Black community, raise some concerns, and particularly in the areas that we're talking about, these drug-free zones. That said, I'm interested to see how it plays out. Right now, we are in a crisis, a state of emergency when it comes to violence in the district. And so we have to see what works. Now, this mass shooting that we had just on Sunday, and rest in peace to the 2 folks who were killed and the 5 others who were injured, we're sending them good vibes. But if we're comparing these newly implemented drug-free zones to a sign of getting crime out of the way or violence out of the way, I'm not sure. And of course, the drug-free zones, which we know that crime or violent crime is associated with drugs, but at the end of the day, the drug-free zones are about attacking the drug problem, which is also a very real issue and does not necessarily directly relate to violent crime. So, we have to sit back. We have to watch it play out in action. My perspective is always make the community involved as well, make them actors in this. And I really do appreciate the fact, again, that activists have been very involved in looking at this Secure DC bill, saying, okay, well, if it's gonna go, how can I be a part of it to make it work?
Avis.
Absolutely. I mean, the challenge here is that you have to balance public safety with civil liberties.
Right.
And that is the challenge. And I also wonder, while you want to do everything to keep people safe, let's think about broader around preventative measures, like what can be done, and this is probably going to take many more investments, but what can and should be done in order to provide the type of programming, the type of wraparound services that perhaps will give people different opportunities so that it would, reduce the propensity to have these types of incidents occur at all. That is not a short-term fix. That's not something where you can push a button and it changes tomorrow. But these sorts of long-term investments, I believe, are the types of things that lead to long-term solutions.
I have a lot to say about what both of you shared, but before we do, I want to play something that we heard last night from DC's 3rd District Commander James Boatler. This is what he said about what individuals can do if they're concerned about crime in their communities.
You're standing under a bright light, it's hard to be anonymous, right? And if you're a nefarious actor looking to commit crime, many a time darkness is where you seek to commit your crime so you can remain anonymous.
He was essentially saying that, as we know, rough things, difficult things happen in the dark. So turn on the lights. Storefronts need to turn on their lights. There have been some criticism of the DC government where they have not been as quick to repair street lights, and certainly that is on them. But the recent statistics are suggesting that crime in the district is down, but perception is really reality, Avis. Do you feel safe?
Yeah.
There was a reported just today about a news staffer from one of the local TV stations. He and his partner were robbed in Adams Morgan. Right. You mentioned the shooting in Shaw. Now that's shocking. 7 people shot.
Right.
In Shaw, 2 of them killed. So, we can talk about the data, but the perception is, do I want to come into DC?
That is a good question, because you're exactly right. Perception and data are 2 completely different things. And if people don't feel safe, what are not only the impacts for the families and the people who live here and have to navigate situations where they don't feel safe every day, but what are the sort of trickle-down effects on the city as a whole, on the economy? As you mentioned, do people want to come here and spend money and spend time and really dig into the economy and enliven and grow the economy of the city? There is a relationship between all of that. So to the degree that there can be some better and more swift attention brought to, as you mentioned, street lights, those types of things, to the extent that we could have better community policing, to the extent that you can have more support around wraparound services. I believe this is, once again, it's not a one-shot action or one-shot solution. This would take a multifaceted approach that would happen over a longer period of time until I believe people will not only be safer according to the numbers, but literally feel safer because they can find out that they can go outside and have less likelihood of something like this potentially happening to them or someone they love.
You spend a lot of time in the district.
I do. I live in the district.
You know, working, jogging, being fabulous, and all the other things that you do. Do you feel safe?
I do. I feel very safe. Now, I'm a native Washingtonian, and I touch every piece of this city through work, through play, through engaging with family and friends. And so I have become really, really comfortable no matter where I am. But there's also a certain way I carry myself depending on where I am. And
yeah, I wouldn't mess with you.
Thank you. We have that on the record. Would not mess with me on the street. But I also think that being from here, I do just have a certain level of awareness that maybe other folks don't have. That said, there are things that can be done, I think, to help you feel safe going in the district. And I also think it's really on us as storytellers to make sure we are framing the narrative in a way that we're saying, hey, the data actually shows that crime is down in the district. And here are some wonderful things that's happening in all of these organizations who are working to combat crime or keep the streets safe. I think that's really where we need to go in order to not only help people feel comfortable here. We are having all these conversations about the Capitals and Wizards not being here, and a lot of that conversation has been around safety. And so if we're saying, hey, wait a minute, I remember a DC that was actually significantly more dangerous, we'll say, or
less safe,
you know, or had other challenges. But also, we are moving in the right direction, and I think that needs to be celebrated. I mean, this mass shooting on Sunday morning was shocking and really, really was sad news to hear. But I think we need to tell both sides of the story. I also want to say, as a native Washingtonian, because we heard that clip, these lights really do make a difference, and I believe in motion lights on your front and back. If you're in the district, if you have a business in the district, really consider it. It makes a difference.
To your point about the Wizards and the Capitals, and there's been some reporting today that Ted Leonsis had a sit down with Maryland Governor Wes Moore about possibly moving the Wizards and Capitals to Maryland. I think the speculation would be that is considerably less possible than moving them to Northern Virginia. But with that said, I think it raises a question, Avis. Leonsis, it begs the question, okay, so what's wrong with DC? Yeah. And he said weeks and weeks ago, this isn't about crime, this isn't about safety, but now with the reporting being that he's speaking to Governor Wes Moore after this situation has failed in Northern Virginia so far, it seems to me that, perhaps Leonsis or someone regarding the move is being disingenuous.
Yeah, that would be important to know, because there's got to be a motivation behind this. And it's a shame, because when I think of DC and I think of the Wizards and I think of the Caps, I think of just going down the street from here. You know what I mean? I can't even imagine it being anywhere else. And so it's sad to hear that there is some exploratory work out there which suggests that something is a motivation for him that he's not divulging. I don't know whether it's a new stadium or whatever it is, but something is pushing him in a different direction. And unfortunately, I think that's going to hurt DC if and when that happens.
For sure.
We're going to talk more about this on the other side, but first we're going to take a break. But don't forget, you can hear every edition of the Daily Drum Insight segment via podcast. That's on WHUR.com. And don't forget to download the 96.3 HD2 app on your smartphone and hear the program live in its entirety. Stay with us. The Reporters Roundtable will continue on WHUR and WHUT TV in just a bit.
WHUT is dedicating weekdays at 10:30 a.m. to bring you the best of our locally produced series, like our Arts and Artists show, Artico, our energetic music series, DMV The Beat.
Get Out. When I wrote that song, we were fighting.
And stories highlighting the endurance of the human spirit with legacy.
He used to say to me all the time, when I die, the newspaper's yours.
So remember, tune in weekdays at 10:30 a.m.
Howard University Television PBS and WHUR 96.3 are joining forces Wednesday nights at 7 p.m. as we bring you Harold Fisher and the Daily Drum live as we take you inside the stories of the DMV. We've got the experts and the people that matter most to help you make informed decisions for your family and your community. That's the Daily Drum, Wednesday nights at 7 p.m. live on WHUT and WHUR. Better together.
Welcome back to the Daily Drum on Sirius XM and WHUT TV. I'm Harold Fisher. We are at the Reporters Roundtable with a look at some of the top stories of the week. My guests are Dr. Avis Jones-DeWeever, Editor-in-Chief of MaxBlack Politics, and of course, Micha Green, Managing Editor of the Washington Informer. Before the break, we were talking about crime, public safety, et cetera, et cetera. One of the things that I did want to mention, because both of you know, I live, in Baltimore, and historically, Baltimore has been, at least has had the dubious distinction of having more homicides than DC. This year, not so much. And, Avis, you talked about some of the more holistic parts of kind of addressing this issue in DC. Year-to-date, homicides are down. Last year was a really rough year in DC. Right. But with all of that said, this is not something I think that the police can do alone.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. It literally takes a village, right? And, there are so many, I believe, mitigating factors that are associated with crime and rising crime, having to do with the economy, having to do with one of the sad things, I think we're still suffering some reverberating effects from COVID.
Sure.
Having so many stores that have not reopened. And so when you don't have a proliferation of activity in the area, it makes it easier for things to happen in those spaces. And so there are a lot of things that have changed now as opposed to a few years back. And I think we're just sort of catching up and figuring out what's going on. And so there's a lot that needs to happen, but absolutely correct. It's not just a police issue. This is a whole community issue.
Yeah.
I think it's systemic. We look at this week in this week's Washington Informer, Sam P.K. Collins. I didn't know that was a tongue twister. I say his name
and you
all
work
the
with
time.
him.
I'm like, okay. But anyway, Sam did a great story about the fact that there are folks in the district working to let the council know that, hey, childcare is far too expensive. They're trying to cap it under 10% of folks' income, no matter how much you make. And so I look at the issue of childcare and not having a place for young people to go because it's too expensive from a very young age, and babies literally raising themselves because the parents have to work. They can't not work, especially here in Washington, D.C. And so you have this trickle-down effect in which there are certain players in the community who are looking out for folks who sort of become these de facto guardians, if you will, and introduce these young people, which we're seeing these statistics pointing to young folks, in introducing them to crime. And so if you're looking at the problem from again, lack of these businesses reopening because of COVID, programs. I just heard, and this has nothing to do with the district government, but shout out to them anyway. I just heard that the National Cathedral this coming week will be opening their nursery for the first time since COVID.
Oh, wow.
And I'm thinking, oh my goodness, yeah, where were folks, were kids just making a lot of noise in church? I guess so. But,
Not in my church. It only happens once.
You get the look. But to your point, there's so many trickle-down effects from COVID, from systemic issues that need to be addressed, that when we look at crime, we have to look at the bigger picture here in the district.
Speaking of bigger picture, obviously this is not just a D.C. issue. Prince George's County
Yes.
has at least 9 homicides just for the month of March. That is a lot. The 9th one, the 27-year-old mother and postal worker who was shot and killed at a Subway sandwich shop at around 2 o'clock in the morning on her lunch break. But even just today, a 15 or 14 or 15-year-old shot in Herndon, the first story today. So obviously this issue of gun crimes is not just a DC issue, but in Prince George's, not at least 9 in 1 month. Today is the 20th. That's like 1 every other day.
Yeah. It's crazy. And you mentioned that you live in Baltimore. I live in Prince George's County. And it is shocking to see that, hear those statistics, live that reality. That's a very sad and unfortunate situation. But as you mentioned, it kind of boils down to gun proliferation too. I mean, we just have too many guns in our society, point blank, period. And the sad situation is it's been the power of the NRA has made this an intractable issue when it comes to politics with regards to really federal legislation that would take a look at this and make a difference. There is no reason why the United States on a global stage is such an outlier when it comes to gun violence, other than the fact that there are just too many guns in our society. I guarantee you, if we were to do something about that, a lot of these people that we're talking about right now would be alive today.
Yeah.
I don't know about that. And this is why I say that. Because I think that gun culture is too deeply embedded in American society. And, where you have, attitudes. And I've been really, really transparent on this program for years when I said, I'm finally decided to go ahead and take a class and purchase a handgun for self-defense. I still haven't done it.
Yeah.
I have one that was left to me by my father. It is an antique. And this is the gun culture thing. Last month, or maybe 2 months ago, I took it to a gun range in Harford County because I wanted to fire it. I had, the guys look. First of all, I was the only only black guy in this place. And it's one thing to say none of them look like me. That's obvious. But I also realized that I was in a room that was completely different from my own personal culture.
Yeah.
And that's what I mean, that those law-abiding good old boys, in that, I don't know how many guns those guys had. But I think that it's not just the guns, it's the attitude.
Right.
About it. And because none of them, as I said, were like me. I've been talking about this for 3 years and still haven't done it.
Right. Well, I think the other piece is, to your point, is that why are certain groups feeling so unsafe, feeling like they need to either legally have a firearm or illegally, as we are seeing in many of these cases with violent crime in the DMV region. I am very curious, for example, the folks that you saw in Harford County, what are they so afraid of, and why do they need that protection in comparison to the young folks that we're seeing every day here near Howard University who are really afraid for their lives, and talk and speak to them and kind of get to the root of, well, how do you feel like you protect yourselves? And if you don't feel protected, what would make you feel protected? I don't think we've talked to these folks and really gotten to the root of how can they feel safe.
I think that is such an important point, because let's move out of the DMV and looking at the spring break violence that we saw in Florida, where one young man or teenager, he had a gun. And in watching that video, and this goes back to Avis's point, if he had not had a gun, because that was the only gun other than law enforcement, but that was the only gun that we saw in that incident. If he had not had a gun, no shots would have been fired because no one pulled out another gun. And so, to your point about too many guns on the street, to your point about why would a young person on spring break need to carry a gun for protection? The guys, and there was a line to get to the gun range that led all the way around the room and out the door. On a Saturday afternoon, suffice it to say, I wasn't able to, to get in. But I think law-abiding citizens, whether they have a similar culture or look like me or not, because we've got a whole lot of black folks who legally own, handguns as well. But they're there to protect their home by and large. They're not, unless they have permits to carry, that's to protect their home. So I think everyone has a reason, legitimate or otherwise.
Well, I would say really quickly, I think you do make a very good point also about this thing about gun culture. Because this is a very real gun culture in this country.
They love their guns.
Exactly. That is very much, let's just be honest, related to white culture in this country.
Right.
And if you look at the spike that we saw, for example, in the purchasing of guns after the election of Barack Obama, that tells you that it's something about this completely crazy, quote unquote, fear. And I think that we're seeing that increase as we are seeing this whole right-wing Trumpification of the culture as well, because the reality is they are seeing the demographic shift in this country. And as the country becomes less white, I believe that that specific demographic becomes more likely to want to go out and buy 50 bazillion guns.
And not to belabor the point, but growing up with a family that is from the South, I never got the feeling that my uncles, my grandfather, even my father had a love for guns. They were tools.
Yes.
Correct.
They were tools to, the shotgun was used to frighten the cows back to the, to the pen where they were first. That was the first thing that it was used for. I saw them do it as a kid. Less so as protection, because there were just too many Fishers and other folks. There are about 20 folks with my last name sitting. Nobody's coming up in that area to bother them. But while even as a child I knew they were there. But the culture, that love, they only used them when they needed to as tools to clean them, to practice, but it wasn't a woo-hoo kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I think that really is, the difference. Because the point that I was making, even the one that was left to me by my father, I know where it is, but I don't look at it every day. I don't look at it every week. I looked at it last month because I needed to move the bag where it is because I was cleaning. But it's different. So, but back to the point about gun culture and young people, just like the video for that for the suspects in Adams Morgan. We're old enough, all of us are old enough to say they look like babies.
Yeah.
Really, really young.
Yeah.
And it's certainly concerning. Now that I brought everything down, let's talk about Metro getting new rail cars.
Oh, yes.
Showing them at the National Mall.
Well, let me. I'm gonna help you out. I was on the National Mall today. I spent some time there actually to take in the cherry blossoms that were a few days past peak bloom. But I happened to get a parking spot right next to the Metro Rail model that folks got to see, and it was packed. Like, I got to see it from a side angle, but if I wanted to make it to the Daily Drum, there was no way I was going to be able.
You could have taken the Metro.
Right. So it was really, really interesting to see how many folks were attracted to it. I'd imagine, of course, there were a lot of tourists and visitors. But I also think there were people who wanted to tap in and see what Metro is up to. They're honoring the over 50 years that they've been around and opening doors.
Yes.
But they're also attempting to bring some newness. And, I have to say, it's about time. Metro has gotten or found themselves in some serious water, deep water over the past, decade and a half. And of course, lives have been lost, people have been injured in the process. That said, I really think they're doing a good job in attempting to say, Metro is a safe place. Take it. It's the best way to get around the city. It's the most efficient way to get around the city. And I have to give them kudos for that. It was a really wonderful attraction. I also took the Metro for the first time post-pandemic last Friday. And it was like riding a bike. I couldn't believe I knew exactly what I was doing.
But did you pay?
I paid.
You didn't jump the turnstile?
I didn't jump the turnstile.
Yeah, okay, just check it.
First of all, my knees will get out these days.
Yeah, from your basketball playing days, right.
From my b-ball career. But, I had Wi-Fi. It was clean, and people were respectful. There was only one guy playing his music out loud. I would do it again very soon.
You're not taking the subway.
No, well, I actually like the DC system when I compare it to other cities in the nation. You would never catch me on the New York subway. Good Lord. Hail to the no. Okay, I don't know what sort of diseases I might catch on.
Right.
Atlanta, Chicago. To me, DC really is. It's efficient, it's not confusing, you can easily figure out the map. I think it's easy for people who are coming from outside of the city to figure out how to get to where they want to go. I just think that it's one of the best systems in the country, honestly, that I've had a chance to navigate over the years. And so I'm excited to see that they are sort of refreshing it with these new cars, because I think they do a lot of things right. Yes, they've had challenges, but just thinking about some of the other cities that I've had interactions with, I still would go with DC any day of the week.
Yeah, kudos to the new subway cars. And, kudos to Randy Clark, who took over and had to really fix a mess. a mess that has taken literally decades to create.
Yeah.
And we're just talking about safety. I'm not talking about crime,
Right.
but just, the brake systems, last week they remodeled more than 160 bathrooms.
Yeah.
Did you know that Metro had bathrooms?
I had no idea.
I had no idea.
I'm not trying to find them, but again, remember, I went to DCPS, so I did know that the bathroom exists. But to your point, I do appreciate DC's metro system in comparison to others in the U.S. But when you go abroad, and see how
that's a whole different thing.
Like I would always use the bathroom in the Tube in London. Okay? just because I know I can, and it's clean, and I'm gonna have soap and toilet paper. And so when you compare it to those, I
Probably got a bidet in there or something.
Like, I'm not using no public bidet though. Let's not take it overboard, okay? But I'll shout this out. My dad lives in Medellin, Colombia, and the metro is so clean that my dad is a New Yorker, and he raves about their system. And I have actually seen people cleaning, scrubbing their system down. So in comparison, I feel like DC still has a lot of work to do. Yeah. We are the nation's capital. And so again, kudos to growth, to new models, to cleaner bathrooms, fingers crossed. But let's keep it moving. And I think part of that is getting people to write it. And so I know your side eye is serious, Harold, but folks, hop on the Metro. I did it for the first time, and I was so pleased.
Yeah, and it's not, and honestly, my side eye is not for where Metro is. My concern, and this is an aside, my concern about Metro is its affordability for working people.
Yeah, well, that's a problem. No, that's a real problem. I mean, when the council and the executive office was really going after young people for jumping the turnstiles, I'm like, they're learning that from seeing adults doing it because adults can't get to work. I remember being a student in the summer youth employment program, and I'm not sure now, they might have like a system set up to also put money on the Smart Trip. But when I did it, at least, there was not. And one of the biggest things I complained about was that I didn't have money to get to work. Yes, I was making money, but I didn't have money to get to work. And so that is a true concern. And again, I think part of making Metro more attractive is being having a system like New York where there's a set fee so that people are not breaking the bank every single time they want to do anything like go to work or get a bite to eat or go see the cherry blossoms. Have that set fee. People know what they're spending. They know what they're spending for the week. They'll write it more. And guess what? We might have a nicer Metro system.
Yeah, let's hope so. I do want to move on before we get too low on time. One word, Haiti.
Tragic.
Look into your crystal ball, Avis, and tell me what is going to happen to this country. Can it survive this? This could be the biggest crisis since the 2010 earthquake.
Yeah, I agree.
But this even worse.
It is so sad. It's just completely tragic, especially given the history of Haiti and the money that is owed Haiti. Let's just be real. It's a reason why it's the poorest. It's just amazing, the sort of paying of their oppressors for decades, centuries. So the bottom line is this is a man-made disaster. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. This is a man-made disaster, and it's just horrifying to see and sad to see. And I don't know what is going to happen to Haiti. I hope that it survives. I hope that it can recalibrate and get to a place where it can have its own strong governments, have the dominion over their own resources, be able to bring money into that nation so that it can flourish. But unfortunately, it is as if the world is allowing it to just flounder. And unless there is some direct action to improve the situation, I see just unfortunately a very bleak future there. And that to me is a huge tragedy.
Yeah, I cannot emphasize enough that Haiti never recovered from the 2010 earthquake. They have been rallying and just attempting to live every day and pick up the pieces from then. I mean, I look at Haiti, a place that, as you said so eloquently, is owed so much and continues to really be oppressed by their oppressors. It is so incredibly heartbreaking. But I also look at people, particularly in the United States, of Haitian descent who I really wish would say a little bit more about how we can tap in. I remember years ago, I guess post the earthquake, when it was Wyclef did sort of a remake of We Are the World. We know he attempted to be president, which was not going to work. But how do we tap in? How do we care? How do we make enough noise that at least we can get leaders to really, really give the Haitian people the support that they need? It's so incredibly tragic to be here and have so much and not know what to do. I look at Corinne Jean-Pierre, who, please correct me if I'm wrong, and I know, X me if I'm wrong for the listeners and viewers, but I feel as someone, now I know her family, I think, is from Martinique, but she is of Haitian descent. She gets to speak every day with such, eloquence about things happening here and how the president is navigating things, not only the U.S. but abroad. But I'd love to see someone with her power say, hey, these are my people, in the same way that I've seen Palestinian Americans speak up and Palestinian American leaders say, hey, this is why you should care. Because I think that that's now the next step.
But I think the solution is beyond the money.
Oh, for sure.
Because the thing that is so fascinating, and the leadership now, is within the gang.
Right.
Yeah.
Because with the reporting that these gangs are now working together to amass whatever resources there may be. But of course it is, that all of that work comes at the point of a gun.
Right.
And I don't know, can political leadership and indeed peace in the streets come from these organized gangs? I don't know the answer to that.
Well, I think, but it still does go back to the money, because if you think about these organized gangs, and yes, they have the power because they have the guns, but the Prime Minister has Secret Service, the Prime Minister had folks around him. These gangs have power because they do have the money. They were working and doing, under the table dealings, wheelings and dealings, because there was money involved, because we know with corruption there's always money involved. And so, yes, they have this power because they have ammunition and they're ready to go, and they're not backing down, so much so that I guess still Prime Minister Henry is exiled in Puerto Rico. He's not playing games. But I also think if all of this corruption roots back to Money, 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 money. And again, these people are owed so much that it really is unfortunate that they don't have it.
Real quick, the federal sentencing of 5 sheriff's deputies and a police officer, former white sheriff's deputies and police officers in Mississippi, going on right now. The 4th who had participated in the racist torture of 2 black men in Rankin County, sentenced to 40 years today. Earlier this week, the attorney for those 2 black men, Malik Zulu Shabazz, had this to say.
Not only has Hunter Elwood shot Michael Jenkins in the mouth at the end of this 2-hour torture session, you all know all the details. I won't rehash all the details of the torture and the beatings and the waterboarding and I got the tasings and the beatings and the waterboarding and the illegal entry and breaking into their homes and beating them.
They talked to authorities that no one believed them. And it was through their own, persistence and, of course, some investigative reporting and everything else that all of this came out. The thing that's really frightening to me, particularly as a black man, and some of the reporting that came out earlier this week, was that this happened because one of those men was dating a white woman. And I remember watching the reporting earlier this week, and they said, well, this is 2024, not 1924.
Yeah.
But Avis.
But it's also Mississippi.
It's Mississippi. It is Mississippi, and I think this is a cautionary tale to show how the system can work, but also how it almost didn't.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It is so infuriating to hear what those men suffered at the hands of these terrorists.
Yes.
And that's what I will call them, because that's what they are. And I am just feeling a little bit relieved that at least justice is coming at the end of this, but it should not have ever happened in the first place. And until we get to a place where it becomes normalized, that when police engage in abusive and illegal and terroristic behavior, that they be met with swift justice, will we find us in a place where this type of thing will not happen. They did it because they believed they would get away with it. And the sad situation is they almost did.
They almost did.
They were so close to it. And it really makes me put into question whether we're still looked at as fully human or not fully human here in the United States, and particularly by law enforcement, that they could treat these 2 men as if they were so unimportant, had no value in the way that they did, and tortured them. It is horrifying. I can't imagine them doing that if they didn't look like us. And of course, you question, is it 1924? Is it 2024? But I think what really is important to say is it is 2024, and that stories like this are coming out all the time.
Yeah.
And we really have to evaluate how we can combat this ideal that Black folk are not fully human still.
Yeah. And that in some cases and in some places, you still got to watch your back.
Still got to watch your back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Micha Green, Dr. Avis Jones-DeWeever, thank you all so much. I appreciate the conversation.
Thanks
for
you.
having me.
That is the Daily Drum for this Wednesday, March 20th. I'm Harold Fisher. Good night.
This program was produced by WHUT and made possible by contributions from viewers like you. For more information on this program or any other program, please visit our website at WHUT.org. Thank you.